This is MG Rob, and this is my MGA Fastback project. And what we're going to jump in today, we're going to start with remaking this piece of infrastructure here. Let's get going. So the cross section of this thing is like this here, so that's not an easy piece to just make and bend without special equipment. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to make it out of 3 pieces. So we're going to make one piece, an L here and an L on here, and then we'll form those with the curves, because it's got to curve this way and this way both. And we can do that on a shrinker stretcher. So what I did was I got 2 strips cut here out of 18 gauge. Now we want this to be approximately 1/2 by 1/2. But so we're going to be putting another piece on the top here. So what I did was these are cut 15/16 of an inch, and I marked it 7/16 from one side. That way when we bend it, we'll put the 7/16 up and the 1/2 inch this way, and then once we cap it, it'll be that height. Actually, it'll be a little over because it'll actually be more like 9/16, but that's just fine. That's about what this actually measures anyway. So then what we'll do is we'll bend it on the leaf brake and then start forming it. Let's get over the leaf brake and get started. All right, so this is my leaf brake here. It's a 8-foot, 18 gauge brake. Now right now it's actually just stuffed back in this corner because I haven't decided 100% if it's going to stay where it's at. And it's actually on rollers at the moment, so it's not sitting quite level and not bending perfect, getting a little bit different at each end. So to avoid that, I'm staying close to the middle. If I stay near the middle, I get a better bend at the moment. So what we'll do is we'll put the 7/16 part in the brake here. Get it where it looks pretty close to 90. We'll do both of them that way, and then we'll move over to the shrinker stretcher. So what we're looking to do is basically do a mirror image of this. So this is the right-hand side, we're making the left-hand side. So it curves down this way, but also has a little bit of a curve this way to get it to come forward of this bolt hole rather than land right there and get in the way of anything there. So this one shrinks and this one stretches. Now, if you don't have the budget, you can buy just a shrinker and you can use a hammer and dolly or a flat, heavy piece of metal to do the stretching as well. But I got the set here. So what we're going to start with is we want to do some stretching on one of these. Now we don't want to do a heavy stretching, just want to get a curve started. And then we'll do the same thing to the other one. But knowing that one of these is going to be the left side of it and the other is going to be the right side of it. So you want them to kind of back to back, be reasonably close to each other. And then we can go look at it on the car and back and forth until we get this shape that we really want. But the other thing we got to look at is not only because it's bowing this way, it wants to bow this way, this way a little bit. We want to do some shrinking on this edge and stretching on this one to get that to bow a little bit. If you get too much curve into this thing before you start to get that moving, then every time you hit it with this, it's going to put kinks in here because this bow, and that's flat. So you can get in there and start getting a little bit of the shape that you want, going into it fairly early on. So it's bowed this way and that way. It'll be this way. I like to try to get a lot of that bow in there first before you finish this one. Now in doing this, you can pretty much hold the two back to back. You know, if you got those really close, it's going to work fine. It's not, if you actually draw the arcs out, they wouldn't be exact. But now we see we got our arc here about right so that it drops behind that. Maybe just a hair more right in here. And then we can start working on getting them finished bowing them this way. So from here, it's pretty much all stretching to finish up making this what we want it to be. It's going to need more stretching. The curve on this is going to have to get more pronounced or tighter as it goes up. Reasonably flat near the bottom. And I'll compare this to the one that's on the car on the other side to see how close I am. So once we got the shape of the one, then what I do is just match them. Now as you do this, it's going to take some of that curve out this way. And then we got to go back through and do just a little bit more shrinking on the one side and stretching on the other to get that curve back in. And if I ever shrink it a little bit too far and put too much in it, I can just go to the other side and stretch it, or vice versa. If I stretch it too far here, I can go shrink it and bring it back. We're actually getting really close here. So I'm probably missing just a little bit of my curve, but not much. Probably just need a little bit more put back in right here. Or actually shrink that, sorry. But that does mess this up because it's already curved, so we gotta, work it to get it back straight again. But then once we get both of them to where they're, pretty close to even, same amount of curve this way and this way, and then looks good on the car, then we'll be ready to cut these things off. All right, so after going back and forth a few times between the shrinker stretcher and the car, this is actually coming down and landing pretty much where I want it to here. The curve here doesn't look too bad, and they match. So what I can do is put this on here, and I'll come in here and we'll mark this here, and that's where I'll cut it off at. And there'll be probably some minor adjustments to actually get the fit, because it's sitting on top of there now and it needs to come in and hit right on here. And then we'll cut the other one as well and move on to making this top piece. So now that we got that trimmed off, sitting in place and looking pretty parallel here, which we can measure it or we can eyeball it. In this case, I'm not getting too excited about it being perfect, because this is just a fun project. If this was more of a restoration or something where I'm trying to be able to show quality, yeah, I would measure this and do a lot more than I'm doing here. But we can put this in here, and there's two ways we can go about this. You can either use the method of pushing on this to get the lines, which can move things around, or we can just take our nice sharp pencil and get it right on the inside here. And then that's our shape that we need to cut out for the top piece. So we can check this for fit. As long as this fits good, we can transfer this to a piece of metal. And we actually specifically want this to not be all the way to the edge, because we want to be able to weld into that corner and then clean it off and still have weld there. And then I still have my bracket pattern from the other side. All I got to do is just flip it the other way, and then we got our bracket, and then we just got to make another one of those for that, and then we can weld all this stuff up and get it welded in the car. Put a few tacks on this thing. Now we can weld that, grind it, and start on the next bracket. So now we got all that thing welded up. Got the bracket spout welded into here. And even spot welded the bracket to the inner fender well. We took the spot welder off its stand so I could take it and around here and use it there. So now we can move on. So now that I got this in here, I went ahead and took my whole framework here off. Figured I'd go ahead and set the trunk lid in place, or boot lid if you will, see how far off it is. I know there's no way it's going to just fit, because I really didn't check the sides against that, and I know this is bent a little bit, so we'll see what it looks like, and then we'll see what's underneath here. I knew at a minimum I'd have to try to flatten this out a little bit here, probably here and here. Looks like I'm going to have to take a little bit more out of the trunk lid, which is a good thing. I didn't want to have to make it longer. So to have to take, say, a 1/4 inch more out is just fine. But I'll have to straighten this out. Looks like that's bent. And then these are bowed out, so I'll have to work on these to pull them back in a little bit. That's where I should have been checking that when I did all the frame, and I didn't. So now, let's see what's up underneath this, because I know this thing's been hitting the rear before. And this was just laying there. It wasn't actually connected to anything but this angle iron. So yeah, we got all this to repair. And what my thought was at this point in time was where the fuel filler was, I might move it up some. So when I redo this here and fix all this, I'll account for that and put a hump in here for that to come through.